hear from God's word together. Pete Norris is going to be speaking for us. Pete Norris is our curate, and he and his family joined us just over a year ago. Now I've been part of the team. Pete heads up all our prayer and discipleship. Pete sort of was did the majority of the work on Grow as well, and so brilliant guy. Where we were starting from, 17, John chapter 11, verse 17. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them in their loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "Well, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day." But Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is come into the world." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let's give a round of applause for Pete. Welcome him. You want that? Go on then, Pete. Hey.
Good morning. That's a lovely welcome. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry. You had the mountaintop experience last week of Rach speaking to you, and I'm afraid, get ready for the valley. So here we go. I don't know about you, but I roughly have about a very, very embarrassing moment once every kind of 4 weeks, roughly. And if I go much beyond those 4 weeks, I then begin to worry that I'm overdue and that it's coming. And this morning one did. So there we are. But I want to this is a bit of a family, well, it's an open family secret, but I just want to tell you about one of my most embarrassing moments possibly ever. Some years ago, I used to work for a graphic design agency, and as part of my job, I would go out occasionally and visit clients and take some of the team and occasionally do some pitches. And at this stage, I'm in my early 20s. I've still got a lot to learn in life, even more so than I do now. And my old boss did a great job of guiding me and giving me opportunities. And one of these opportunities was to go to a pitch to a significantly sizable company, a car company in London. And it was a big deal for us as a company, and it was a big deal for me to go. And so I want you to picture this, right? It was the heat of summer in kind of 2013, and I find myself in a suit pacing across London to get to this pitch on time. I blame my boss because he was the reason I was late, but I rarely run. I was not designed to run, and yet here I find myself running from train to get to this meeting on time. I did a half marathon in 2011 with my wife, and I made a commitment then I am never running again. And largely, I've stuck to that promise. So despite my best efforts, I'm 10 minutes late, which is like a big no-no in the corporate world. I'm also incredibly sweaty. Like, there is sweat everywhere. I get to the reception, and I quickly go to the loo because I think I can't go into this pitch in this state, and it's just me, so I've got no backup. And why it seemed like a good idea, I don't know, but I grabbed the blue roll and just started patting down everywhere before I went in, all over my face, everywhere. And I went in, made this pitch. I thought it went all right. And then I came out and thought, right, I'll just go to the loo again before I get back on the train to go home, only to find that on my head was still a bit of this blue roll that had been flapping around the whole time. Unsurprisingly, this car company did not give the sweaty blue roll on head guy any projects. Then, I don't know why I made this decision, but I then decided to phone my boss about it and be like, you'll never guess what happened to this pitch. I came out and there was blue roll on my head, which I don't know why I didn't get a P45, but there we are. Remains a mystery. But in that moment of realization, for me, there was a thought that flashed through my mind of, I need rescuing. I don't know if you've ever felt like that in an awkward moment where you've thought, Jesus, if you're coming back now, please come back now. This would be a great time. But whilst everyone has a kind of awkward social situation that you may want to be rescued from or escape from, there's also this much, much deeper sense in each one of us, something that we need rescuing from that's much deeper in us. We all have that desire to be rescued from the brokenness inside of us and outside of us. And it's like this ache. It's a sense that something is not quite right with us or the world, but we don't always know how to name it. It's this unknown ache in every human heart that we struggle to diagnose, let alone find a solution for. And I think this unknown ache sometimes manifests itself, or often manifests itself, as a desire, deep desire for love, beauty, truth, meaning, justice. But the harder we grasp at these things, the slippier they seem to become. Just when we think we're getting hold of something of that, it slips out of our hands. And this ache for something to make us better and the world better is everywhere in our culture once you begin to spot it. Danny Boyle, who headed up the Olympics introductory ceremony thing, wrote this in the program. It's going to come up on the screen as well. He said, "We hope that through all the noise and excitement, you'll glimpse a single golden thread of purpose, the idea of Jerusalem, of the better world, the real world of true freedom and equality, a world that can be built through the prosperity of industry, through the caring nation that built the welfare state, through the joyous energy that built popular culture, through the dream of universal communication, a belief that we can build a new Jerusalem." But Danny Boyle, how's that going? Because it doesn't look like it's going very well 11 years on. Our culture offers us a kind of diversity of ways to soothe that ache in every heart, at least for a moment. But even if something works for a little while, it never works for very long. And Tom Wright describes it when he says this. He says, "The world promises so much, smiling alluringly, telling us how good things are going to be, but it never turns out like that. Even if it does for a while, there is a dark, mean truth to be faced soon enough." And that dark, mean truth that Tom Wright is referring to is the reality of death. Death, as the theologian Daniel Strange puts it, he says, death is the final confirmation to our suspicion that all is not right in the world. There is a whisper, I believe, in every human heart at a funeral, whether it's in these words or in a slightly different expression, that goes something like this: there must be more than this. That is the unknown ache at its sharpest. And it's like a homing beacon for God. But God has acted to answer that ache in every human heart through the person of Jesus. And this is where we get to this story in John 11 about Lazarus. It's not the whole story. It's quite long. It's most of chapter 11. But it's one of the many moments in the Gospels where Jesus is displayed for who he is in full color. He's here to rescue us from that unknown ache. He comes to offer resurrection and life, which is both a future and a present reality for Christians. So here's how. The story of Lazarus being raised from the dead is like a trailer for a movie. I don't know if you've seen the ads. I keep getting it in my YouTube ads for the new Napoleon film. I've never been so excited to see a film. I can't remember the last time I was that excited to see a film. But the idea is it's giving you a taste. It's giving you a foretaste of what you're going to see. And this resurrection of Lazarus is a foretaste of what's to come for everyone who believes and trusts in Jesus. Poor Lazarus, he's the only person in history, probably, who's had to die twice. So it was a sign. It was something pointing forward to a reality that's coming. And in this story, Lazarus' sister, Martha, this is at the point where he's in between being raised from the dead and all the drama that goes on before that. His sister Martha comes face to face with that ache that we all face, the ache of death ultimately. And she's understandably upset with Jesus. And we get angry and upset over death because it reminds us of something that was true all along. It reminds us that in reality, we have so little control over our lives. When I got married about 11 years ago, it was 11 years ago, wasn't it? It was 11 years ago. One of the things that I wanted desperately at my wedding was to have a hog roast. That was all I wanted. I was like, we can do whatever you want. Just let me have a hog roast, please. And that day was lovely. Obviously, Rach was lovely. But I was quite excited, to say the least, to get to the hog roast in the evening. Everything else was a slight diversion from that. It's like, get me to the hog roast. Obviously, the main service was great. But see what I said about the embarrassing moments? I told you I was overdue. And that's 2 in one day. But in the evening, despite my best efforts, I could not get to the hog roast. People just kept wanting to talk to me. And I just think, it's there, it's right there, but I can't get to it. And sometimes in our family, that day is still referred to as not our wedding, but the day that Pete didn't get a hog roast. Despite the illusion that it was our wedding day, and theoretically you kind of control most things, I couldn't even control whether I got hog roast or not. Thank you for that sympathy. See, some people on the team just know how much that matters to me. But Martha came face to face with her complete lack of control. She couldn't control whether Lazarus got better or died. And how many of us have felt kind of completely powerless when someone you love is really sick? And get this, Jesus has the audacity to say, your brother will rise again, which at the time is probably kind of a common way of offering kind of condolences and sympathies. But Martha thinks that Jesus is referring to the resurrection at the end of time, which most Jews at the time believed. They believed that the body would be risen again at the end of time. But that's a long way off. So in my kind of paraphrase, she basically says to Jesus, duh, I know he will rise on the last day, but that doesn't help us right now, does it, Jesus? And then he comes out with this. He then says, I am the resurrection and the life. And it's this kind of mic drop moment. He's effectively saying, Martha, that future event that you're waiting for, it's not necessarily a moment in time. It's a person. And he stood right in front of you. It's me. Jesus goes on to say, the one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever believes in me, whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Whilst Martha may have completely felt out of control, Jesus is calm, endlessly calm, because he has complete control over life and over death. And he offers to rescue us from the ache, not just in life now, but in death as well. Jesus says as well as him being the resurrection, he says, I am the life. And that kind of unknown ache that we were describing earlier, that ache for love and for truth and for beauty and justice, he is effectively saying, we could spend ages kind of unpacking what he means by life, but I think a good way to think about it is he is saying that those things which we yearn for, the deepest parts of us that yearn for, can only exclusively be found in relationship with him. He is the home that your heart was made for. He's the place where true life is found. Like the way a compass always points north, the aches in our hearts are designed to point somewhere, and they point to the person of Jesus. He offers to rescue each of us from that unknown ache and to experience true life now. There is no other relationship with any other person that can satisfy you like Jesus. Every other relationship you ever have, whether romantic or otherwise, will prove to be fractured and fractious. But Jesus is that source of unfailing love that will never let you down. And his offer to rescue you from death and to give you life isn't just kind of like a blanket generic offer to the whole of humanity, although it is an offer to the whole of humanity. Kind of like it's not mass market. Like when we used to live in Exeter, and I'd walk. Everything's food related today. Sorry, but I'd walk past Subway, and they would always give out like a little pack of vouchers, which would mysteriously get used up. But it's not like a kind of mass market offer. He is offering you specifically, life and resurrection. I went on a school trip to London when I was at primary school, and I remember we were in Hyde Park, and we spotted John Major, who's the Prime Minister at the time, so I'm dating myself. But I was amazed, even though I didn't really understand who he was. I was just like, that guy's on the TV a lot. And I don't really know why, but I shouted to all my friends. We kind of gathered around him and took loads of pictures. And when I got home, my parents took my disposable film camera that I'd taken with me, got it processed, and all it was pictures of John Major and ducks. So don't know why there were so many ducks on there. But I knew of John Major, but I didn't know John Major. We don't expect people in positions of high authority normally to know us by name, let alone anything about us. But here's Jesus, the King of Kings, the one who holds all authority in heaven and on earth. And even over death, he has authority, and he calls you by name. He knows the specific aches in your heart. He knows everything there is to know about you, and he calls you by name out of death and into life. And later in the passage, in verse 43, you see Jesus called Lazarus by name. He says, Lazarus, come out. He calls each of us by name. And he also asks each of us a question that deserves an answer. He says to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? Do you believe this? To say yes to that question, you need to be able to trust him. And I don't know about you, you need to know that when someone is making quite a big statement like, I am the resurrection and the life, that they can actually deliver what's being offered. Every now and then when I put an order through online and I get an email telling me that it's being dispatched with a certain courier company, which I won't mention because this will go out on YouTube. But every time I get it, I'm like, they're never getting that to our house. It's going to be in a recycling bin or something. You need to have the confidence that the person offering can deliver what they're offering. Jesus was the first human, the first God-man to punch a hole through death. He has defeated death. He is now in his resurrection body as proof of that. And the evidence for the resurrection is overwhelming. Just come to the next Alpha in the spring and you'll find out. But you can trust him. You can say, I believe, precisely because he's done it before. And if you can trust him with the very gravity of death, he can be trusted with everything else in your life. He can be trusted with every other facet, every other thing that is going on for you, he can be trusted with. Tom Wright puts it this way. I do promise I read other scholars, but he just tends to always put it so well. But Tom Wright says this. He says, if the God who raises the dead, we can trust him with every lesser task that may come our way. He can be trusted with our exams. He can be trusted with our jobs. He can be trusted with marriage. He can be trusted with money. He can be trusted with old age. He can be trusted with death itself. Of course he can. He is the God who raises the dead. So what about you? Because I think Jesus says to each of us this morning, I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe this? And as we kind of look towards coming into some prayer ministry in a moment, I think there are two groups of people that this specifically perhaps is for this morning. First, I wonder if there's people here who perhaps you've done Alpha, perhaps you've just kind of been skirting around the edges of Bay Church and trying to work out if everyone's normal or not. But there's a moment that's come for you of like decision, of like, do I believe this or not? And if that's you, we're going to invite you in a little bit to just a way of saying, yes, I believe. Or perhaps the second group of people, For you at the moment, it's a case of, I want to say I believe, but I'm going to do it through gritted teeth, because actually my circumstances don't seem like I can trust God with all those things at the moment. And there's another moment in one of the Gospels where someone responds to Jesus by saying, I believe, help me with my unbelief. And that might be you, struggling to actually say the answer to that question. And we're all there sometimes, so there's no shame in being in that place. But as we come to an end, why don't we stand together as we respond to this? If the worship team want to come up as well, that'd be great.